Commoner. Ah, this is another inn. Bounces, the bartender, and not YOLO, but VOLO.
Yes, a tab. Another ale, young miss. I'll be sure to have your funds ready.
Greetings, fellow traveler, for I see your garb that you do not call this place home. Sit with me a while and enjoy the atmosphere of this fine fair, where we recount tales of lands far and far seeming. I have wandered the width and breadth of Faerun, but yet have to find such hospitality as that of a simple country festival. It's a shame that the festivities are marred by the events as of recent, though they certainly put up a brave face, do they not? You look confused, so perhaps you know not of the local trouble that continues to vex the most gracious people of Nashkel. If you have just arrived, I could, for the price of an ale and an ear, relate what I know. Shall I tell you of their mining difficulties, or relate the tales of their unfortunate commander of the guard? My companions and I have an interest in the mines. Tell me what you know. The word is that all across the expansive Sword Coast, from the Cloud Peaks to Baldur's Gate, an ore shortage is severely crippling local trade. Bandits, purportedly both human and demi-human, raid caravans, whilst ore reaching its destination becomes brittle and useless following smithing, strangely afflicted by an odd iron weakening plague. As though this were not cause for alarm in itself, production at the mines outside of Nashkel has fallen, with the substantially lower yields being blamed on nervous workers. Mysterious disappearances of several miners have set the whole area on edge, and where something must shift the balance to one side or another. An interesting story, to be sure. Well met, Volo, and good luck on your journeys. And you as well. I'm quite certain our paths will cross again. Troubles in the region, rumors and happenings. So Volo is like a person who okay. So he makes longer version of other rumors. Would you consent to another tale? I also have an interest in the story of the captain of the guard. I'm afraid that, although I've enjoyed our chat immensely and it has heartened me to see the wandering spirit is still venerated, as I must take my leave, I need some time to myself for reflection upon everything I've learned while here in Nashkel. Okay, he doesn't want to tell me about the story I already know. Okay.
I got some cheap beer
Business
for you.
is on the wane today with the fair just east of town. So would you like a drink? Yes. A dragon's breath beer, a mead, a Westgate ruby wine. Iron so scarce these days you would think it was as valuable as gold. Not a good thing, not a good thing at all. Upper and dry wine? A lot of the people here in town are scared. The mines to the east haven't been doing too well. Some good men have died in them. Left some really sad widows. Some say there's some sort of monstrous infection in their mines. And Solinian topaz wine, and Arbellan red wine, and some meat, and some dragon's breath, and Westgate ruby wine, and topaz wine, and the dry wine. I ain't gonna serve you another drop. You can barely stand as it is. You best you sleep it off before you go out looking for trouble. And not there. Iron Crisis and the festival east of... Yeah, we already knew all of that. Ah, okay. So let's look. We have intoxicated. Yeah, I'm drunk. I know. Nothing here. Okay, we can all go. Okay, we haven't many more places to search. There's someone named Minsc. The capital of White Russia. Paid with a K, isn't it? They have other letters. Could always be transcription.
Stand and deliver, that my hamster might have a better look at you.
I agree, Boo, they look to be friendly. Greetings, we are Minsc and Boo. We have traveled far to explore this land, but now my charge dinner here has been taken from us. 'Twas Gnos, and once we've... Dinner here? That was the witch we are supposed to fight. Has been taken from us. 'Twas Gnos, and once we've tracked him, I will beat sense into their heads until they release her. Accompany us, and bards will sing the deeds of Minsc and Boo and friends. How could anyone decline? Take heart, fellow adventurers, for you have curried the favor of Boo, the only miniature giant space hamster in the realm. My friend and companion ever since my head wound will lead us to victory. Onward to the Gno stronghold in the west. Tarry not, we must go soon. And we'll leave... Were you? No, you're you. Done.
As the full moon wanes and disappears, so too does our association come to an end. I pray that it will one day wax again, and we should travel the realms side by side.
What was it? Winterwolf, perhaps? That's a no.
Cities are always
Rescue
so
dinner
intimidating. So many people.
I've agreed to help Minsc rescue his friend. She's held captive at the Gno stronghold far west of Nashkel. And you are a ranger. When asked... Oh, it's so much time. Okay. When asked about his past, Minsc proudly announces that he is a berserker warrior from the nation of Reshiman in the Utter East. He is currently undertaking his Dejema, a ritual journey to manhood, and is seeking adventure and glory in battle. It is also his honor to be the bodyguard of a young witch Laren of Reshiman named Dinner here, and if anyone tries to harm her, he will beat sense into their heads until they reconsider. He is as unsure as to why she has led them into the Sword Coast, but his loyalty is unquestioning. If he serves her well and distinguishes himself in battle, he hopes to be accepted into the Ice Dragon Berserker Lodge upon returning to their homeland. So far, Minsc considers his most notable experience in the world abroad to be the acquisition of his animal companion Boo, a creature that he claims to be a miniature giant space hamster. Apparently such things do exist in the realms, but Minsc has surely taken too many blows to the head. He seems a good-natured fellow, but is all too willing to indulge his berserker nature. Okay. You can level up. Two-handed sword, or mace, or longbow. Two-weapon style. He can use two weapons, but he can only use two-handed swords. That's bullshit, so I should change. He only gains one thing. Okay. Level up results, additional weapon proficiency, 3 Thaco. Okay. And 33 hit points. But only one proficiency slot. We could go to master, or we could go. He is already at 0 with the main weapon, so we could use double maces. We'll use double maces. Okay. Then go to your inventory, and you have a two-handed swords and Boo. Boo is a fuzzy little hamster, while Minsc believes that Boo is a miniature giant space hamster. You're rather certain that the tiny rodent is just a normal hamster. Yeah, I was certain of that before the game told me. But, okay.
Stand away, citizen!
Hey there, who told you that you could come in here? This place is only for members of the Amnian Soldiery. Little snot noses like you're not welcome here. Come on, get out of here before I have to kick your butts. Hey, I'm sorry we didn't know that this was the barracks. We'll get out right now, okay? Good, run off with your tails between your legs. Now if you accuse me, I have important business. Get out of my way. And he got away, which is interesting, but okay, let's go. Didn't want to go inside the barracks. I'm still intoxicated. Haven't saved for a while also. Ray, who said this game will be the death of me? I assume that's someone who died during the production of the game. That's sad that they had to bury him within the game. Okay. So I assume my next mission was always to go to the Gnoll stronghold, but now we have another what do you call that? Another reason to go there. But I wanna read the books that I stashed upstairs. So, in this episode, nothing else will happen but book reading. So, feel free, if you don't want to hear the book reading, feel free to just skip ahead to the next episode, where we will go to the Gnoll stronghold. Until then. So, you're still here. And if you're still here, you're here for the reading. I'll have to put that away to have some more place. So let's read these books and then the history of the North in a straight line. Okay. The history of the Baldur depth. Oh, my throat and tongue will hurt so much after reading all this to you. One of the great and mysterious sites in the Moonsea area, the Baldur depth, is connected with legendary Northkeep, an island kingdom that was the first great citadel of humankind in these cold lands. Northkeep was a great and magical city, and it was under the protection of these magics that humanity first began to press back the Orcs and take command of the sea. The power of Northkeep made it an obvious target for orcs, giants and other evil races. However, these creatures were not inclined towards sea actions, and Northkeep seemed safe until the day when, according to legend, 40,000 inhuman mages, shamans, witch doctors and priests of all foul races gathered on the northern shore of the Moonsea and began to chant, bringing the vengeance of their gods down upon the human interlopers. The gods came and destroyed their priests for disturbing them, but also sank Northkeep beneath the waves. The upper reaches of Northkeep, its slender and broken spires, can be seen beneath the water by boats that sail nearby. This is not attempted often, however, as the region is said to be haunted by the original defender of Northkeep, seeking company in their watch over the cold lands. On fog-ridden nights, the bells of the tallest towers, despite being submerged, can be heard as far as Hilsfar. This container, does it have... Can it hold these books? Nope. Okay. So I'll put that book that I just read. Should be this one. Nope. Should be this one. Nope. Should be this or this one. This one. Yeah. So we just read about the Moonsea, so it should be best to read about the Moonsea further. The Moonsea has a long history as the border between the elven lands to the south and the darker, more sinister lands of the right and Thar, home of dragons and giant and ogre tribes in great multitudes. The deep sea was an excellent barrier to the raiders, as those tribes who sought invasion had to detour around and through the lands that would eventually hold Julash, Candlekeep and Hilsfar. The first settlement in Moonsea was Northkeep, a shining citadel established as a beacon of civilization, as a jumping-off point for merchants seeking trade with the dwarfs of the north, including not only Tethiamar, but the clans of the Cold Lands, who traded their metalwork and craft for much-needed magic. In the end, Northkeep was sunk beneath the icy waters of the Moonsea by inhuman forces, and humankind suffered one of the many setbacks in the region. So has been the nature of human habitation of this region since the beginning. Human settlements thrive for a few years, usually through sheer willpower and on the strength of a sharp sword, and then are overrun by goblins, orcs, dragons, beholders, or giants. Flann has fallen and risen again. Julash is a ruin where a decade ago there was a thriving town. Hulberg and Sillersprin are empty hulks. Each of the cities of the Moonsea seemed threatened with extinction in its turn and then is rebuilt. This circle may be the reason that only the strongest and most savage survive, even prosper in the lands of the Moonsea. The greatest city, Hillsfire, Mulmast, and the impenetrable Candlekeep are all ruled by evil people who control their land with iron grips. The lesser cities, Elventree, Flan, and Thanthia, may be less evil but have a strong, independent, most chaotic nature. In many ways, the Moonsea is a frontier with a frontier mentality. Did you just say something? I didn't hear you. I have to make it pause. And also I have to go away from that to see. If we be adventurers, let us... boring. Okay. We have to pause the game here because I don't want any time limits to run out. Okay. Because I assume his mission has a timeline. The Chosen of Mystra. I assume I already read that. The Chosen of Mystra. I heard about the Chosen of Mystra, but was that in a quest or in such a book? Bane, Merkel, and Baal were the gods. I don't remember that story, so let's read it. The reason why Mystra, the goddess of magic, invested a portion of her divine might in mortals is not known. One of the more popular theories, and one that is gaining more support in light of the goddess's other actions during that period, is that Mystra foresaw the time of troubles and her own passing at the hands of Helm, and chose to give some of her power to mortals in order to ensure that her successor, the female mage Midnight, as it turned out, would have a number of nearly immortal allies in the struggle against the schemes of the gods, and know that Bane, Merkel, and Baal, who precipitated the time of troubles by stealing the tablets of fate. The theory goes on to suggest that Mystra informed Azoth that approximately the year of the rising flame, more than 1300 years before the time of troubles, that some of her power must be put into the hand of mortals who would become I assume I already read that. I read that already, The Chosen of Mystra. It's Shadowdale history and the last march of the giants. I have to stop recording here now, but I'll resume that in the next recording and then we'll go on for the next episode. So see you now. And I'm back for reading. Not that one. Let's read about the history of Tethir. Put it over to my inventory. That way. For the past 1,500 years, Tethir has had a single strong royal family ruling with absolute power. When a king died or became incapacitated, his oldest son took the throne. As the family trees of those close to power became more intertwined and complicated, there were the inevitable wars of succession and bickering over which second cousin was the true heir to the throne. Civil wars were brief, however, and once the fighting was over, the system returned to normal until the next major dispute in a few hundred years or so. The established reoccurring cycle was broken 10 years ago. The current ruling family has been in power for over 350 years, so long that they had dropped their own family name centuries ago. No one even remembers it now, and simply called themselves Tethir. King Elamander IV was comfortably ruling from Castle Tethir, and the country seemed happy enough, but there was a broad current of dissatisfaction among the people of Tethir. Non-humans were forbidden by law to own land, and since most rights and privileges accorded citizens were based on land ownerships, they became second-class citizens as well. Things were especially bad for elves, who were driven deep into the forest of Tethir by royal armies. Elemander IV took land away from rightful owners and gave it to nobles who promised larger contributions to the royal treasury. These social and economic inequities, coupled with several harsh winters and bad harvests in a row, made the time ripe for a change. It takes more than just a couple of lousy winters to depose a king, however. It takes treachery as well. In the case of the fall of House Tethir, it took an ambitious general and an impatient royal heir. Prince Elemander grew tired of waiting for the robust Elemander IV to make room for him, so he struck a deal with General Nashram Sharboneth, commander of the king's largest army. While Sharboneth marched his army toward Tethir, bringing along a sizable group of angry peasants recruited with the promise of a land reform, the would-be Elemander V downplayed alarming reports from the king's spies and advisors, silencing the most persistent permanently through murder or exile. By the time Sharboneth's army arrived and laid siege to Castle Tethir, it was too late for loyalists to help. As Sharboneth launched a direct assault on the castle, using the expendable peasants as shock troops, of course, he's an asshole, a handful of elite soldiers let in a secret entrance by the prince would eliminate key guards and open the gates. At the same time, the prince, one of the few people allowed to see the king directly, would murder his father. A fire set by the elite troops would destroy evidence of treachery. The general and the prince would emerge from the conflagration and announce a new joint government. The plan was executed perfectly, but only up to a point. Sharboneth double-crossed the prince. His men were much too efficient in setting the castle ablaze, and Prince Elemander, along with most of his fellow conspirators, died horribly in the fire. At about the same time, a spy planted on the general's inner staff by the equally duplicitous Elemander murdered the general and dissolved his body with a powerful acid before anyone could come to his aid. To make matters worse, everyone had underestimated the resentment the people felt for the royal family. Once Castle Tethir began to fall, there was no holding back the mob. In one night, the proudest, strongest castle in all the country was reduced to a smoking ruin. Everything of value, fine tapestries, plates and silverware, furniture, jewelry, weapons, clothes, armor, paintings, statues and so on, was either stolen, burned or just ripped apart and stomped into the dust. As news of the fall of the royal family spread, so did the chaos. In what is now known as the 10 Black Days of Elaine, anyone known or even suspected of blood connection to the royal family was put to the sword. This led to some darkly humorous moments, as social climbers who had bragged just a week before of being a sixth cousin twice removed of a royal aunt tried in vain to convince an angry mob that they were only kidding. The nobles who were the biggest supporters of the royal family also came under attack, and some baronial keeps fell. Local leaders who had adequately distanced themselves from the Tethir family, or were popular enough, or feared strong enough, survived. These surviving nobles became the initial players in the fight to decide the fate of Tethir. One thing was certain: any leader or type of government that too closely resembled rule under the Tethirs would not be accepted. Royalist became a dirty word in Tethir society. The power struggle continues to this day, and there's no sign of it ending anytime soon. Seems like an interesting place for a setting for a game. But we won't reach that place in this one, I assume, because it was only one book. So, the last march of the giants. East of the Great Rift, in the Eastern Shire, once stood the land of the Titans. This empire rose at the dawn of time in Farron. and its lords thought to challenge the gods in their arrogance. In punishment, the powers cursed the reigning monarch of the land with fascination and his brethren with devotion. The powers then dropped a star onto the land. The impact of the fallen star created a huge valley later known as the Sea of Fallen Stars. Appropriate name. Slowly picking up speed, the ball rolled through the Titan nation and onward to the south. Unable to contain his curiosity, the Titan King ran off after the bouncing sphere, and his devoted followers dutifully followed his tracks. The meteorite rolled on and on until it reached the Great Sea and vanished into the depths. How do you pronounce that? THS. PTHS. Depths. The monarch dove into the sea, and lemming-like, the entire Titan race dove in after him, idiots, never to be seen again. Ashamed at the destruction they had wrought, the powers vowed to keep both curiosity and loyalty firmly in check to avoid such disasters in the future. They have done so to this day, preventing both new ideas from being pursued with any speed and the intelligent races of Toro from ever fully cooperating. And then we'll put it to the other thing. Yeah, no, can't do that from the inventory, we have to do it from here. Okay, so what's left here is the history of Shadowdale, but only 12 and 13. 12 and 13. So, I'll let that sit here and begin to... let's just go out for a moment. I want to mark this building on the map. Ah, it's the manor house. I'll additionally mark it as library for returning later. Done. Sometimes not very easy to click these. Ah, I'm still intoxicated. Almost forgot that about the last session. Okay. And Joe has a problem and cannot walk. Okay. Go here and read this one. The History of the North, Part 1. Take it with you. The problem is I don't know which of these I already read, but I think the North ones were short, so I assume we'll deal with them in this episode. For millennia, gold elves dwelt in Ilafan, where Waterdeep now stands, and Erlan along the River Shining. From there on, at forest cities, they traded with emerging human nations like Netheril and Ilask, and repulsed the attacks of goblin races. Meanwhile, dwarven clans united as the nation of Delzun, named for the dwarf who forged the Union. The nation, existing primarily underground, extended from the Ice Mountains to the Nether Mountains. Silver Moon Pass was its western border and the Narrow Sea its eastern shore. Orcs came from the north of the spine of the world, but were turned back in great slaughter by the elves. To this day, this is the homeland, its stronghold for orcs and similar races. Humans immigrated in bands from the Shining Sea and up to the Sword Coast. They became seafarers, striking out across the waves to the Moonchase, Midhan, Ruathim, and the Northern Islands. Elves engaged in an unceasing war against each other, with the humans and orcs taking over the resulting ruins. Perhaps the greatest calamity to befall the fair folk was the Dark Disaster, a killing magic that took the form of a dark burning cloud. It enshrouded the kingdom of Miarata, and when it faded away some months later, not an elf lived, nor were trees left, only an open blasted moor, the High Moor. All was not dark for the elves. Although in retreat as barbarian humans and orc hordes grew in strength, their power rose in the Elven Court and Evereska, remaining a stronghold to this day. They conceived of cooperation between dwarves, kindly humans, and other elves for mutual survival against orcs, marauding humans, and the tide of beasts, the ogres, the bugbears, the trolls, the goblins, the gnolls, and other non-human creatures, led by the rising power of giants. Astonishingly, in at least 3 places, the Fallen Kingdoms and the cities of Silverymoon and Mithranna, they succeeded with shining grace. To the east, on the sandy shores of the calm and shining narrow sea, human fishing villages grew into small towns and then joined together as the nation of Netheril. Sages believed the fishing towns were unified by a powerful human wizard who had discovered a book of great magic power that had survived from the days of thunder, a book that legends call the Nether Scrolls. Under this nameless wizard and those who followed, Netheril rose in power and glory, becoming both the first human land in the north and the most powerful. Some say this discovery marked the birth of human wizardry, since before then mankind had only shamans and witch doctors. For over 3,000 years Netheril dominated the north, but even its legendary wizards were unable to stop their final doom. The waning summer months of 1367. In the waning summer months of 1367, an immense orc horde descended from the spine of the world, intent on winding its way south into the tradelands of the north. This force of orcs, led by King Grineer, surged its way south between the Moonwood and the Coldwood, stopping just outside the Citadel of Many Arrows. King Obold, orc ruler of the Citadel of Many Arrows, was terrified at the prospect of another orc horde, despite the fact that he knew they should be working together against the humans of the north and the spawn of Hellgate Keep. His tribal shamans, however, had been predicting a treacherous fall of the citadel, and they told the king that he would be disposed by other orcs. Thus it was a dark day when King Grineer and his horde of 150,000 orcs appeared on the plains outside the Citadel of Many Arrows. King Obold announced to his followers that this horde had been sent to dislodge them from their home and sent them out to be scavengers among the plains. He vowed that, as Grumsh as his witness, the Citadel of Many Arrows would slaughter these treacherous orcs like elves during a festival. For 4 months, the 40,000 orcs within the citadel held their ground. Assault after assault was mounted against the high walls of the garrison, but the attacking orcs were losing far more than the defenders. Still, the living conditions within the walls, never too good to begin with, created losses of their own. The battle for the Citadel of Many Arrows culminated during the first week of Uktar, as another light blanket of snow sought to bury the gathered orcs. King Grineer threw his entire remaining army at the citadel, bursting its gate and pitting orc against orc in a flurry of swords. As the two orc kings sought one another out along the ramparts, the citadel began to burn. The orcs that survived the battle still speak of the extraordinary prowess of their two kings as they battled one another before their troops. Finally, however, King Obold ran Grineer through with his longsword, but Obold was severely wounded by the time Grineer had breathed his last breath. The orcs erupted into battle once again, and no one is quite certain what became of King Obold. It was through the smoke and snow that the victors of the conflict emerged. The dwarfs of Clan Warcrown, along with a contingent of troops from Silverymoon. Charging in through the shattered gates, these new attackers quickly routed the exhausted orcs of the citadel, sending them scurrying off into the wilderness. King Amorous Warcrown now rules the Citadel of Many Arrows, though the dwarves now call the city by its old name of Felbar. Most in the north still tend to refer to the city as the Citadel, however, waiting to see if it can withstand the next orc horde. King Warcrown has put out a call for all dwarves to help defend the citadel, and news of a new vein of gold and silver spreading rapidly through dwarven communities. This era left behind elven strongholds ripe for pillaging by humans and orcs. When elves chose to leave the north and travel to Evermeet, their works quickly disappeared, leaving only places like the old road and a ruined port in the high forest to mark Eorland's passing. And yet it was not only the elves who would disappear from their long-held homes, the human nation of Netheril also stood on the brink of history. Doom for Netheril came in the form of a desert devouring the narrow sea and spreading to fill its bank with dry dust and blowing sand. Legend states that when the great wizards of Netheril realized their land was lost, they abandoned it and their countrymen, fleeing to all corners of the world and taking the secrets of wizardry with them. Most likely, this was a slow migration that began 3,000 years ago and reached its conclusion 1,500 years later. Whatever the truth, wizards no longer dwelt in Netheril. To the north, the once majestic dwarven stronghold of Delzun fell upon hard days. Then the orcs struck. Orcs have always been foes in the north, surging out of their holes every few tens of generations when their normal haunts can no longer support their burgeoning numbers. This time they charged off their caverns in the spine of the world, poured out of abandoned mines in the Grey Peaks, screamed out of lost dwarf holes in the Ice Mountains, raged forth from crypt complexes in the Nether Mountains, and stormed upwards from the bowels of the High Moon Mountains. Never before or since has there been such an outpouring of orcs. Delzun crumbled before this onslaught and was driven in on itself. Netheril, without its wizards, was wiped from the face of history. The Eorlan elves alone withstood the onslaught, and with the aid of the Trent of Turling and other unnamed allies, were able to stave off the final days of their land for yet a few centuries more. In the East, Eorlan built the fortress of Escalhorn and turned it over to refugees from Netheril as Netherese followers built the town of Kars in the High Forest. The fleeing Netherese founded Lorg and... Is it Lorg or York? Because the double L. I'd say Lorg now, until I'm corrected, and Loudwater. Others wandered the mountains, hills and moors north and west of the High Forest, becoming ancestors of the Earthguard and founders of Silvery Moon, Everlund and Sunderbar. The adaptable humans made use of magic they could seize or learn from the proud peoples to defeat all enemies, breaking for a time the power of giants and orcs. Waterdeep was founded. The last of the pure-blood elves died out, a result of continued marriages with humans. In the far west, men also dwelt, wise, clever primitives called the Ice Hunters. They lived simple lives on the coast since time beyond reckoning. Countless generations before Netheril's first founders set foot on the narrow sea's western shore. Yet this peaceful folk fell prey to another invasion from the south, crude longships that carried a tall, fair-haired, warlike race who displaced the Ice Hunters from their ancestral lands. This race, known as the Northmen, spread farms and villages along the coast from the banks of the winding waters to the gorges of the Mirror. Northman warriors drove the simple Ice Hunters farther and farther north, forced the Goblin King back into their mountain haunts, and investigated the last council of Illithorn. Within 500 years of the Northmen's arrival, Illithorn was no more, its residents had migrated to Evermeet. From the coast, Northmen sailed westward, claiming and establishing colonies on the major western island of Ruathem and Gundalan, eventually spreading to all the islands in the Northern Sea. Others migrated northward, past the spine of the world, and became the truly savage barbarians of Icewind Dale. That's where it's an expansion? No, it's an own game. Yeah. In the centuries that followed, Eskelhorn became Hellgate Keep when it fell onto the hands of fiends, and Airland collapsed under the attack of a new orc horde. The elves fled southeast. Which elves? Didn't it just say that no pureblood elves are there? They're only half-elves. The half-elves fled southeast, joining with Northmen, Netherese descendants and dwarves to form what would later be known as the Fallen Kingdom. This realm was short-lived and collapsed under the next orcish invasion, though in dying it dealt the goblin races a blow from which they have yet to recover. Along the coast, in what was once the elven community of Illafan, humanity was once again rising in power. Merchants from the south, tribesmen from the north and seafarers from western islands had created a village around a trading post on a deep water harbour, first known as Nemours Hold, after the Elfgard chieftain whose tribe seized and fortified the ramshackle village. Nemours and his successors, known as warlords, led the Men of Waterdeep, as it had become known to ship captains, in a slowly losing battle against the Trolls. In a final climactic battle, the Trolls breached the aging palisade, and all seemed lost until the magic of Agaron of Silvery Moon turned luck against the Trolls, destroying and scattering them. Agaron, heir to the heritage and learning of Netheril, stayed in Waterdeep, and in his 112th year he again saved the city, this time from itself. In so doing, he created the Lords of Waterdeep. The city grew into the greatest in the north, possibly in all Faerun. With Waterdeep as a firm anchor, civilization forged cautiously into the wilderness. Illuscan, now Luscan, was taken from the orcs. Loudwater, Lork, Tribor, Longsettle, Secomber, and other towns were settled by pioneers from Waterdeep, sponsored by Waterdavian merchant families. Though it's been centuries since the last orc invasion, there's still constant strife. Barbarians harass merchants, travelers town, the seas swim with Northman pirates, and wars have marred the land in recent years. Luskan, now a fierce merchant city known to harbor and support, pirates, waged a war with the island realm of Ruathim over an act of piracy against one of the few legitimate Luskan merchant ships. The war raged for nearly a year, with Ruathim slowly losing ground. When it appeared Luskan would finally win the naval war and land on the island itself, the Lord's Alliance entered the fray. They threatened war against Luskan if the skirmishes didn't stop immediately. Unable to fight a true front war efficiently, Luskan cancelled its invasion plans. Tensions between Luskans and Ruathim are still high, and their ships are often seen taking potshots at each other as they pass, often just a wave or two away from each other. The government of Ruathim has recently been sending adventurers into the hills of its island realm, looking for mercenaries who are killing merchants, farmers and woodsmen. Ruathim believes Luskan still has a presence on the island, trying to win through subversion and terrorism what it could not accomplish through war. To the far north, the 10 Towers have finished rebuilding after being nearly destroyed by the monstrous forces of Akar Kessel. With help from the Tundra barbarians living nearby, they've built and repaired their cities, replanted the sparse foliage, and most importantly, replenished the morale of their citizens. A recent trader who passed through the area carrying 17 wagons of rare oak lumber said that it was nearly impossible to determine who's a barbarian and who isn't. They are living together, he reported in amazement. As the dwarves settled in for the winter in their reclaimed city of Felbar, a group of Centaurum-sponsored adventurers broke into Great Worm Cavern, slaying Elrim the Wise, shaman leader of the Great Worm tribe. As the tribe's warriors descended into the ranks of the evil adventurer's teleportation magic spirited at least 3 of those responsible, as well as a vast amount of treasure stolen from Elram to safety. According to Tamrin, the tribe's president shaman, Elram promised to watch over the tribe in spirit now that my mortal form is destroyed. Despite the reassuring words of Elram, the tribe suffered through an oppressive winter that included heavy snow, scarce game, and low morale. Trusted visitors to the barbarian encampment report that Thamrin and Gweshan Iron Hand Telestars are wearing some form of armor made from the scales of Elram. This use of their former shaman's body as protection was supposedly ordained through a dream vision. The armor appears as little more than a supple leather armor, but seems to deflect blows and protect as well as full plate armor. Nesma reported a drastic rise in the number of troll attacks in the Evermoors. And various sources confirm that something is driving the trolls out of the moors. Whatever is behind the trolls' exodus is destined to remain a mystery for the remainder of the year as adventuring parties expend themselves against the never-ending supply of trolls that are fleeing the bog. In the most surprising move of the year, the Blue Bear tribe, led by the shaman chieftain Tanta Hagara, marched on the fiend-ridden fortress of Hellgate Keep. While a brief struggle for political control of the city was reported by various sources, Tanta Hagara emerged as the new ruler of the city. And now I'm putting all of them in here, supposedly in the right order, I hope. Okay. So we read the whole history of the North. Interesting, and I'll have to think about that for a bit. There were some very interesting parts that seemed very, like, normal, like real human history, but with a bit fantasy. And we'll read more about Shadowdale once we acquired at least 13 of these books. So, that was the extra long lore-centered video, and yeah, you can join me in again on the next episode where we go towards the Gnoll Fortress. See you then.